What if the greatest danger in life isn't having too little, but instead believing that having more will finally be enough? Most people spend their lives pursuing security, a bigger bank account, a larger home, a more comfortable future, and on the surface, that seems entirely reasonable. After all, who doesn't want stability? Who wouldn't want protection from uncertainty? But Jesus tells a story that challenges one of humanity's deepest assumptions, the belief that accumulation can save us. The story is known as the parable of the rich fool, and it's one of Jesus' clearest warnings about what happens when perception becomes trapped inside the illusion of ownership. Jesus tells the story in Luke 12, verses 16 to 21, saying, "The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, 'What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops.' Then he said, 'This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?' This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." Like some of our previous parables, the parable unfolds in four movements. Number one, abundance arrives. Number two, possessions become identity. Number three, control becomes an illusion. And number four, reality breaks through. At first glance, the problem appears to be wealth, but wealth isn't actually the issue. The issue is perception, specifically the perceptual distortion that arises when the ego confuses accumulation with safety. It forces us to ask the question, what happens when a person builds their security on the wrong foundation? Let's begin by taking a look at the four movements, beginning with movement one, abundance arrives. The story begins with success. The rich man's land produces an exceptional harvest. Notice something important. Jesus never says the man gained his wealth dishonestly, and he never condemns the harvest itself, because abundance is not the problem. The problem arises when the man makes his possessions his identity, which leads into movement two. After achieving the abundant harvest, the rich man immediately begins thinking, "What shall I do? My crops, my barns, my grain." Over and over again, the focus remains on himself. There is no mention of gratitude, no mention of community, no mention of responsibility, only possession. The rich fool is the archetype of a person who expands the ego instead of expanding consciousness. His perception immediately shifts from seeing himself as a steward to seeing himself as an owner. Psychologically, this is the moment when the rich fool's identity becomes fused with accumulation. The more he possesses, the more secure he feels. The more secure he feels, the more he believes his future is under his control. In Jungian psychology, this shift represents ego inflation, the psyche's attempt to create a false sense of invulnerability. The inflated ego hoards, accumulates, expands, fortifies, isolates, avoids, denies mortality, denies limitation, denies dependence, and perhaps most importantly, denies truth. It builds bigger barns because it cannot tolerate the anxiety of uncertainty. So the man comes up with a plan. He will tear down his barns and build larger ones to store his wealth and secure his future. Then his self talk says something very revealing. "You have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry." This shows that in his mind, the problem of his life has been solved. The uncertainty is gone. The future is guaranteed. However, what this actually shows is one of humanity's oldest illusions, the belief that we can control tomorrow, that if we gather enough, we will finally be safe. This distortion has a name in psychology. It's called the illusion of control. The illusion of control is the belief that more planning, more insulation, more backup plans, more contingencies, more saving, and more storage will eliminate uncertainty. But uncertainty is not eliminated by accumulation, it's eliminated by alignment. And alignment is a function of consciousness, not storage. Then comes the shocking interruption. God says, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you." The word fool, as used here, is important. Jesus is not describing a lack of intelligence. The man is clearly intelligent. He is successful, strategic, organized. His foolishness lies elsewhere. His perception was disconnected from reality. He prepared for everything except the one thing he could not control, his own mortality. This is the moment when reality breaks through the illusion in movement 4. Everything the man built will be left behind. Everything he accumulated will stay where it is. Everything he trusted will prove incapable of saving him. And the question echoes through the parable: what was it all for? The rich fool never gets the opportunity to answer that question. His story ends the moment it is asked. Ours do not. Sooner or later, most of us encounter a moment when life forces us to wrestle with the question ourselves, a moment when the value of what we have gathered is measured against the reality of what endures. For Elias, that moment came as he stood in the doorway of his mother's house after her funeral, the air still carrying the faint scent of her perfume. The rooms were quiet now, too quiet, as if the house itself were holding its breath. His siblings moved through the space with cardboard boxes, gently wrapping dishes, sorting papers, deciding what to keep and what to give away. Every object had once meant something to her. Now each one waited to be assigned a new fate. Elias picked up a porcelain figurine she had loved. He remembered how she would dust it every Saturday morning, humming softly. But now in his hands it felt strangely hollow, like the meaning had drained out of it the moment she was gone. He set it down, feeling that something inside him had shifted. A year later, Elias found himself in another house, his brother's this time. Same boxes, same sorting, same quiet. His brother had been a collector of everything: tools, books, gadgets, souvenirs from all the places he had visited. He had built his life around these objects, each one a small anchor against uncertainty. But now the anchors were unmoored. Elias watched as his siblings divided the items, some with care, some with indifference. A few things were kept, most were donated, some were thrown away. It struck him with a force he couldn't articulate. Everything his brother thought he needed was suddenly irrelevant, not because the objects were worthless, but because the person who gave them meaning was gone. Elias felt something collapse inside him. Not grief, but illusion. That night, Elias sat alone in his car, staring at the boxes they had loaded into the trunk. He whispered to himself in the dark, did any of this matter? His mother's treasures, his brother's collections, all the barns they had built, gone, redistributed, reassigned, dissolved. And in that dissolution, Elias saw something he had never seen before. Security built on possessions is fragile. Security built on consciousness is not. Over the next months, Elias noticed something strange. He didn't want anything, not in a depressive way, not in a detached way, but in a clear way, as if his internal valuation system had been recalibrated. He walked through stores and felt nothing. He saw advertisements and felt nothing. He opened his own closets and felt a quiet question rising. Why did I ever think I needed all this? It wasn't minimalism, it was perceptual clarity. The barns in his mind had emptied themselves. Elias began to understand what had happened. He had witnessed, twice, the collapse of a meaning structure. He had seen how objects lose their significance when the person who held them disappears, how accumulation dissolves instantly, how identity built on possessions evaporates, and how fragile the ego's sense of security really is. And once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. His consciousness had shifted from surface security, the ego's barns, to deep security, alignment, coherence, truth. He didn't need more. He didn't want more. He didn't seek insulation. He began seeking clarity in how he could live his life consciously. Elias didn't become a minimalist. He didn't sell everything. He didn't renounce the world. He simply stopped believing that things could save him. He stopped building barns. And in that quiet shift, he discovered something the rich fool never did. Security is not what you keep, security is what you're aligned with. His mother's things were gone. His brother's things were gone. But the clarity they left behind remained. And that clarity became the foundation of his life going forward. Jesus ends the parable with a striking statement. You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. So, what does rich toward God actually mean? I think it means investing in the things that outlast possessions, like character, compassion, integrity, love, wisdom, and truth. A person can have great wealth and still be rich toward God, and a person can have very little wealth and still be completely bankrupt in what matters most. The issue is not what is in your bank account. The issue is what occupies your mind. The rich fool built bigger barns because he believed they would finally give him the security he was seeking. Most of us don't build barns out of wood and stone, but we do build them. We build them out of achievements, reputation, knowledge, possessions, relationships, and sometimes even noble pursuits, which raises an uncomfortable question. What happens when the thing that once served a meaningful purpose slowly becomes the place where we store our identity? To see how subtle that process can be, consider the story of a man named Sam. Sam started his YouTube channel with a simple goal. He wanted to help people. The videos were rough in the beginning. The lighting was poor, the audio wasn't great. Most of his uploads struggled to reach 100 views, but that didn't bother him. Every time someone left a comment saying, I needed this, Sam felt like the effort had been worthwhile. Then one video took off. 1,000 views became 10,000. 10,000 became 50,000. His subscriber count began climbing faster than he had ever imagined. At first, he was grateful, but gradually something shifted. Every morning before he prayed, before he read, before he even got out of bed, he checked his analytics. How many views? How many subscribers? How many comments? How much growth? He told himself it was just part of being a creator. But without realizing it, Sam had begun building barns. The first barn was made of approval. Every compliment was carefully stored away. You're brilliant. This changed my life. You're my favorite creator. Whenever insecurity appeared, Sam would walk into that barn and remind himself who people said he was. Then he built another barn. This one was made of numbers. Subscribers became proof that he mattered. Views became evidence that he was succeeding. Growth charts became measurements of his value. Whenever a video performed poorly, he felt anxious. Whenever one performed well, he felt alive. His emotional state rose and fell with the statistics. Soon there was a third barn. This barn was filled with identity. Sam no longer thought of himself as a man who made videos. He thought of himself as a successful creator. Without noticing, the channel had become part of his self worth. The larger the audience grew, the larger the barn became. One day, Sam sat in front of his computer after releasing a video that he believed was the most important message he had ever shared. He had poured his heart into it. He refreshed the analytics page. A few views. He refreshed it again. Nothing. Hours passed. Still nothing. The video failed. For days, Sam carried a heaviness he could not explain. The problem was that he had begun storing his identity inside the barns. Every subscriber was another board, every compliment was another nail, every achievement made the structure larger, and all the while he quietly believed, once the barn is big enough, I'll finally feel secure. But the barn was never full. It could always be bigger. Another milestone, another award, another viral video, another 1,000 subscribers. And then it hit him. The numbers were not his treasure. The numbers were only numbers. His treasure was the thing he had nearly forgotten in the pursuit of growth, the truth he was called to share. That day, Sam didn't delete his channel. He didn't stop creating. He didn't stop caring about the work. Instead, he began sorting. He kept the passion. He discarded the obsession. He kept the mission. He discarded the need for applause. He kept the calling. He discarded the belief that his worth lived inside the metrics. And as the barns lost their power one by one, something surprising happened. For the first time in years, Sam felt free because he finally understood a truth the rich fool never learned. You can own many barns without becoming their servant, but the moment you place your identity inside them, they begin to own you. The kingdom begins the moment we stop measuring life by what we possess and start measuring it by what is real. Because in the end, the question will never be, how much did you accumulate? The question will be, what did all that accumulation make you become? And that changes everything. Thanks for watching.